Hello again, this is Mike with Toy Train Tips and Tricks, and in this episode we are taking a look at these Marx lighted O27 metal turnouts and how to modernize these and make them more efficient and more effective. So years ago I purchased a big bulk box, alliteration, big bulk box of Marx turnouts, and most of them were these the typical Marx turnout that you see, the metal ones for O27 track that just have the box here. Some of them were aluminum colored, some were aluminum and red, some were black and red, and some were all black like this one. But what they mostly had in common is just this plain box here. But a couple of them had this piece added to it. And, you know, obviously this is an indicator light for the position of the switch, red for curved and then a green for straight. Now, unfortunately, my four that I acquired out of the box, all four of them had burnout bulbs, the incandescent that came with them, and most of them came with the inserts that are in here that help change the color were broken. And this is a very thin piece of, I don't know if that's styrene or acrylic, but it's very thin. And you can imagine after years of use and being next to the heat of the incandescent bulb, these are very fragile. And so I needed to come up with an alternative. So first of all, I swapped out the incandescent bulb for these LEDs. Here's one right here, and this is the same LED bulb that fits the headlights of the 666 and 1666 steamer that's in that video. Exactly the same. This is an E10 screw base 12 volt LED dimmable, and the light direction goes out 270 degrees out to the sides, not all straight up. So this was a perfect match. And not only does that give me nice bright light, but unlike the incandescent, it comes on with very, very little voltage to the track. I turned it off, and here, see, we're already lit. And comparing that to like the Lionel Searchlight car, there's not much light there. You see how much quicker this responds than this does, and this light is powered off of track power. It's internally wired into the turnout. So I wanted to come up with an alternative for the light bulb and also for the mechanism replacement, because I could not find any replacement pieces of these. So I came up with a way to make my own using my 3D printer. Okay, so this is what the majority of these switches looked like when I acquired them. This one hasn't been used yet. I'm going to refurbish it and get it ready for the layout. But you see, I've done nothing to it. If you look in here, the light housing, this is all rusty. So I'm going to take this apart and clean it up, add my my pins and my inserts like I do to make it work with Lionel. But what you can see here is how this mechanism works. And that is, again, we have two of these, a red one and a green one, and these sit here. This is probably the wrong order, but they sit here over the bulb, and as the switch throws back and forth, let me get this in here where you can see it, but as the switch points throw, you can also look in here and see that this is wiggling, and as the points throw, it moves from one side to the other, from the red to the green and vice versa. And then here is your light bulb. Again, this is tied into track power, internally wired, and then the housing sits on top of that. So my first problem was to create new of these. I couldn't find replacement parts for them. I had tried cutting, you know, strips of plastic to work, but getting it to curve right and have the right kind of springiness, it just wasn't working for me. So in my case, the 3D print was the answer. So I took this, took the measurements off of this, and I drew this up in Tinkercad the free online program. And I printed these out on my Ender 3. This is so-called transparent, although it's not really transparent. It's more translucent. It's not super clear like a window, just because of the way it prints. But this is, the material is PETG, which is more heat tolerant than PLA, the standard print medium, and also because this transparent wasn't available in PLA, at least when I purchased it. It may be now. They're always making new advances in the filaments. I don't know if there is a transparent PLA yet or not. So after I take the new light filters off of the printer, how do I make these transparent versions look more like the red and green so that I can have the colored light showing through instead of just clear? Well, I have a very high-tech method of doing this, and this is called a permanent marker. So use your favorite brand. I like these wide chisel tips. And yes, just get in there, both the inside and out. You'll want to do both sides for maximum color. So why do I use paint? Well, paint would block out the light completely. We want the light to shine through, so we want to add some color to our plastic, but not so much that the light cannot pass through. So we make our green one here. Let's flip it over so we can do the other sides. Again, you want to do both sides of the plastic to make the light as uniform as possible. And when you're doing this, again, also don't forget the top. There is a light lens on the top of the turnout as well. Getting this all over my fingers. But I never was one to color inside the lines. Okay, and down here in the bottom of the U as well. Okay, real high-tech method here. All right, so now I have my green lens. Let's do my red one. And sometimes you can see it's starting to fade a little bit, so what I like to do is let it sit for about 30 minutes and dry, and then come out and do a second coat. And that seems to work better. I need to stay on camera here. By doing multiple coats, I find it holds onto the plastic better and gives me better overall color. Now there's probably, you could probably use, if you had some, say, glass paint or light bulb paint, would probably work in this instance as well. But not having any of that around and not wanting to go to the expense, because some of that stuff can be kind of expensive, especially compared to a marker, I can get the job done just as well and a whole lot less expensively. Okay, and if it's not perfectly neat, remember, this is going to be hidden inside of a housing. All we're doing here is adding just enough of a red or green to the tint of the light to display. So as it diffuses through, it will give the lenses a red or green glow. So if you have some spots that you miss, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be super smooth. And even down here at the bottom, you really don't have to get that, because that's going to be the light bulb is going to be up here anyway. So again, I'm going to let this dry for about 20-30 minutes, come back and do a second coat. But you can see that the color compares favorably to the originals, or at least what the originals look like today. And we'll do a second coat, and then we'll be ready to install. Now I have my lenses properly colored, and I'm going to now get this switch ready for service on the layout. So I'm going to, since I've got some rust down in here, and the motor's a little sluggish, so I'm going to take this puppy apart and clean it out. It's probably got 60 to 70 years worth of gunk in here. So whether it's the 1610 version with the lights or whether it's a 1590 without the lights, they come apart the same way. And that is, if you flip it over, you see that the back is held on with 2 rivets, one here and one here. So it is this one and this one. Leave that one and that one alone. They hold this plate on, which serves for the inside rail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small drill bit. I'm going to drill out these 2 rivets. And when I'm ready to put it back together, I'm going to use some small machine screws to put the switch back together. But anyway, I'll take the cover plate off, and we'll get inside and see what we can find and see what we can clean. And now let's take the cover off and see what we can see. All right, this doesn't look too bad. I've seen much worse. We've got some gunk, looks like some oil and grease in there. And this insulation paper is about shot, so I'm going to replace that. But most of it's got some rust in here. Not too bad, though. So that gets us to this. The other thing we're going to need to do is pop off this so that we can get to the solenoid, make sure it's in good shape, and also clean out this rust. So that is held on with these tabs right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 twistable tabs. And so we'll straighten those out, and then this will pull right out. That is going to make it hard for this puppy to move. So we're going to have to clean this rust out, free that up, probably lube it, and while we're in here, we will check to make sure that the solenoid is working okay. Okay, I'm going to shoot this with a little bit of WD-40 and then get in there and try to loosen it up, making sure not to get any on the solenoid. The last thing you want is WD-40 anywhere near any of your electrical parts, because it will actually collect dirt and make things worse. But it should free up these parts pretty well. Put a little bit in there, and I'm going to work it back and forth and see what happens here. Wow, this is a tight one. There, it's already starting to loosen up a little bit. Oh, quite a bit. Okay. Still sticky on the edges, but that is much better already. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, much better. Much better. All right, now I'm going to take my dollar scrubbing toothbrush and see what I can do about working some of this gunk out of here.
I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. I've been working on the railroad to pass the time away. Don't you hear the whistle blow? rise up so early in the morn. Don't you hear the captain shouting, China, blow your horn.
Steel instead of rust. Okay, so here we are about 10 minutes later, and we've got nice clean copper contacts. The other side of the track is clean. All these contacts are nice and clean and rust free now. And then on this side I went ahead and put a little cleaned up the rails while I was at it. But again, this was all rust covered. It's not completely back to original stainless steel shine, but it is now legible as what it was. It's not rust. You can see that it is sheet metal here, and and the rails slide like they're supposed to. It is supposed to catch here on the end. As long as I keep it in the middle, we have good function back and forth. And so the last thing that I'm worried about here is cleaning up the solenoid coils. So I'm going to use some contact cleaner for that, and we're going to spray it and we're going to let it sit. So I've got my QD electronics cleaner. I'm going to spray it real good, soak it good, and then I'm going to turn it upside down and put it on a towel and let it sit overnight and see how much gunk comes out in the morning. Okay, so now we've got it all cleaned up, but the main question is, does it work? So in this case, I've got it wired up with the common to the middle post, and then my hot is going to be to the two outsides, and as I touch each one, good throw and good throw. So when we started this process, this thing would not even throw with the help of hand power, and now it is throwing nicely at about 12 volts. And let's see what happens if we crank it up. Nice and crisp. That's 16 volts. That's about as crisp as it gets. This is like new. So before we go any further, let's make sure the light bulb works. So I switch my alligator clips to track power, turn on the track power, and yes, my light fixture works. And again, you can see as the rails turn, this piece, which holds my two lenses, slides back and forth, green, red, red. And so then the lights shine out the top of the housing. And that's how that works. So there are a number of ways to wire these switches up for different types of controllers, including Lionel switch controllers. But I'm not going to go into that here because I've already made a video of that, which you can click on right there if you are interested. So now let's put this back together. Here on the back side, there was originally this piece of cloth type paper was covering this up, and that provides an insulator between the switch contacts here and the metal base. I'm going to reinforce this. I'm going to use some vinyl electrical tape, and I'm going to cover that up, and that will become my new insulator between these posts and the bottom of the plate. So, and then the second piece was right over here, and that I really can't put tape on because this is a movable part, and the idea again is to keep this from shorting out against the bottom of the switch plate. So I have to have something that the bar can slide underneath, but I can help anchor it in place by putting tape on either side. And before I screw the base plate back on, I need to put the housing back on. Now, when this was done originally, it was done so that no one would ever get in here, kids and whatever. Well, I broke in, and I'm going to make it easier on the next person. I'm not going to bend these tabs very much at all. I've got them pretty straight, and it's just going to pop in there. And just like that, it's not really going to come off unless somebody really works with it. So making it easier either on myself or the next person to come back in 50 years. And I just popped the housing through. I'm not going to bend the tabs back because it's on there pretty good as is. Now I'm going to screw the base on. Machine screws, they're still not the ones I was looking for, but these are 4mm by 10mm. They're still a little on the long side, but they are better than the other choice. So hopefully someday we'll get hardware back in stock and be able to find shorters. Probably 6mm high would probably be ideal on these. So that looks better. 4mm by 10mm, so I don't need to cut those off with a Dremel. I just need to keep shopping to find shorter machine screws. So one of the steps I'm not showing you here is how I modify these to make them compatible with Lionel in order for the Lionel and MTH and K-line rollers to not get caught in the gaps on here. And I'm not showing you that because, well, that would be a waste of time because I've already made a video on how I do this, and that is available right up here. Click right there if you're interested in that. And now for the fun part. And by fun part, I mean the not very much fun part. And that is attaching our lenses and our light bulb. So my light bulb is in first. Now, one of the reasons why I made it so easy to take this housing off is I'm going to pop it off again. Because with this loose, it's going to be much, much, much easier to put the lenses on. So in the position where it is right now, the green would go here, the red would go here. So let's put the red one on first. Now, with the housing off, like I said, this is much easier. With the housing on, you have to be a little bit of a Houdini to come in through the top of the housing and to get these little slots lined up with these. And even so, it's not super easy. It is a tight fit to get the slot in the lens to go into these little claws here on the metal. And you want a good tight fit. Now, one of the advantages to doing this in PETG is that it's a little springier, and so it will naturally want to expand. And there we go. We got it on the back side. It'll naturally want to expand and push itself back into the slot and not come free once it's in. Okay, so that's the red one. Let's do the green one. This is much, much, much easier with the housing off. Let me tell you, because I've done it before with the housing on, and it is not any fun. Okay, so let's get our slot lined up. Push it on here with a screwdriver. Okay, and the files for these little doodads are available on Tinkercad or Thingiverse. I've got the links for these included in the description on the video. But as you see, we've got the green one and the red one. And when the track is straight, the light bulb is under the green one. And when the track is curved, it slides under the red one. And then that distributes the light through our lenses. So let's now put the housing back on. And again, since I straightened all the tabs, all I have to do is push it back on. There it goes. And click it in there. And that has made this process much, much easier. Okay, so the last part is to put our lens housing on, and we'll be ready to roll. Okay, and two things to know about Marx parts compatibility. Remember, Marx tried to make things as simple as possible. So these lenses that are used on these switches are the same lenses that are used on certain pre-war steam locomotive boilers as marker lights and headlights. So they're conserving parts there. The other thing that is really cool is if you have lost, misplaced, or whatever this screw, your common household screw that works on your household switch plates is exactly the right size and type to fit in this place. So you can take it, screw it in, and of course you can change the color of the head, but your common household switch plate cover screw is exactly the right size to fit for the housing. And now you can see that we have our green lights and our red and our green, whoops, not very good, green, red, green, red. And so now this works just the way Marx intended it to so many years ago. So if you want to use the originals, if you can find good ones, I said out of the 8 that I should have had with my 4 turnouts, I've got 2 good ones. So most of them end up broken. But if you want to use those, if you can use those, great. If you can come up with another material besides using the 3D printer, go ahead and add that in the comments if somebody comes up with an idea for those who don't have a 3D printer. But there we go. Or if you have a better idea for how to color these besides the marker, something that gives it a little darker without blocking the light, I think these work. They're a little on the light side, but it does work. And if I come up with a better idea, I can always go back and change them out later. Oh, now I've got it stuck. Okay, so there it is. Again, this is the number 1610 lighted metal O27 switch. Very similar to the 1590 that doesn't have the light, but taking them apart and servicing them, it works the same way. And you see how this switch, how rusty it was and how the rails wouldn't even move, to now it is a functioning turnout, almost ready to go on my layout. I just have to make my Lionel-friendly modifications to it, and I'm ready to roll. So there it is. It's how to service and update your Marx 1590 or 1610 O27 metal turnouts. And as always, I hope you liked the video. If you do, please click like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share it, and tell your friends and tell your neighbors. And most importantly of all, until next time, keep the trains running.